is Spectrum.
Alternative medicine, homeopathy, secrets, society, hypnosis, the paranormal, alternative energy, UFO, abduction, the weird, the wild, and the wonderful.
With your hosts, Tom Theophanous and Scott Jordan.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Spectrum Radio Network on BBS Radio 2. This is Scott Jordan here with my co-host, Tom Theophanous, and remember, there's no such thing as too much information. Well, we're back. We had a 2-hour break earlier tonight. We had a special event where Spectrum Radio Network hosted a webinar between Bill Ryan, BBS Radio listeners, and Project Avalon members, where Bill answered live questions posed via Project Avalon chat. Carrie Cassidy also joined us for the last half hour. It was a fascinating event and one on which I hope we can do again in the future. Tom, how you doing?
I'm good. Well, tonight we have a guest that's also on BBS Radio, Alan Steinfeld, who is right before us, actually. He's been a host and producer of the New Realities television show for the past 15 years for Time Warner Television, New York City. In that time, he has produced over 500 interviews, according to his bio, but I think he's done well over 2,000. With the leading-edge thinkers, paradigm thinkers and shifters, religious leaders from all over the world. He is the author of the book Careers in Alternative Medicine, published by Rosen Publishing, and it's now in its 3rd edition. He has co-authored a play. He's recently directed the narrative film Never Wear a Dead Man's Shoes. He has a Bachelor of Arts at the State University of New York in Buffalo. He's a traveler, but he calls Manhattan his home. Welcome, Alan.
Thank you. Great to be back here on PBS. You know, it feels like home, and
it is home.
it is the home station there, especially for the kind of stuff we're doing. You know, the themes of my program are similar to what you're doing, to what Bill Ryan's doing. There can't be enough of us doing these types of programs, because the more this information's out there, the more the world can change. So we're all in it together. That's what I feel.
For sure.
I agree with that as well.
Yeah.
And what I want to try to cover tonight, I want to dig down a little. You've done, like Tom was saying, over 2,000 interviews with people in all different areas and spectrum of life experience. We recently interviewed, it hasn't been aired yet, but we recently interviewed your uncle,
yes,
George Steinfeld.
Yes.
And he was just, the depth on that man and his life experience is exceptional, to say the least. And I really enjoyed it. That'll be aired January 4th, just so people know. But I wanted to ask you, how did you get into this life path? What was your inspiration? Did you always know you were going to be doing this, or did it just sort of happen?
Well, I didn't know I was always going to be doing this, but, you know, my Uncle George is my father's brother, and George was like the psychiatrist or the psychologist. He's really a psychologist, and his early studies were about perception and how we know reality, and he and my father would discuss these kind of philosophical questions when I was young. So there was, and my father was a seeker as well. He was a spiritually open person, and my Uncle George, he talked to, started a prison ashram program in Danbury Prison, and so there was this already this awakening and openness within the family. I didn't have to get there on my own in a way. I was sort of led there because of my associations, and that's so there wasn't a lot of stuff to overcome. I mean, my father was brought up religious, Orthodox Jewish, but then he became a Buddhist and lots of different avenues of thought. So the door was open, and it's like, when you have the opportunity like that to explore spirituality at a young age, and it answers certain questions about the world that science can answer and religion can answer, it makes you more aware that there's these other possibilities that are beyond both science and religion. They all have their place, but what I'm trying to talk about is a level of spirituality, a level of the eternal nature that we all seem to have. And I think that's what this new time is moving into. I think UFOs, ETs, that's all about that, astral projection, out-of-body travel, near-death experiences. We're realizing we're greater than the material world that we've been programmed to think that is all there is. So I've been fortunate to have a early jump start in that area, and I just kept running with the ball, So
Right.
here I am.
You ran with that philosophically at an early age. You had influences around you. What got you into the broadcasting part of it?
Well, let me just go back to the early influences because those things wouldn't have meant anything to me if I didn't have the experience, to back up the philosophy and the knowledge. So I started to have out-of-body experiences, and so did my father, and I'm not sure about my uncle, and then I started to have weird dreams about UFOs and sort of being abducted and those kinds of things that definitely were not answered in any mainstream sort of way. But then there was a literature that said, hey, there's this, other people have had similar things. So I started to find people who had similar experiences. Instead of just asking them what was going on, I created a format where I could legitimately just seek people out and say, tell me about your experiences. So I started a television show in Manhattan Cable, and I was able to meet lots of different people because I had a television show. And I do the show, and maybe you do this show for yourself. I'm doing it because I want to understand a greater capacity of the world. I want to understand what else is there. I mean, I'm thirsty for knowledge and excitement, and we need knowledge in order to back up the experiences, to explain experiences. So that's why I started the program, so I could understand what was happening to me. Does that make sense?
That gave you a broad base of information where you could draw from other people's experiences to fill out your knowledge base, to answer some of your own personal questions.
Well, isn't that why I can't help being the interviewer, but isn't that why you both do this show? Because you are aware there's something more, you're curious?
Of course.
Yeah, I agree.
And I think we've been doing this for about 30 years now, at least for myself anyway.
Right. So now you have a good excuse for doing it. You're on the radio and people are listening, so that's what I feel. Well, I'm curious about all this. I'm asking the questions. Why can't I share what I'm finding out with others, and maybe they'll benefit from it too? So, and this has taken me into some amazing avenues.
And from that, what I'd like to know is, since you have come in contact with so many people, just brilliant people, you interviewed Ram Dass, Deepak Chopra, all kinds of huge names. How has that affected you? How has, if you can go back and filter back through, your life and then bring it up to now, has that evolved you or changed you or affected you? And what is that process like?
Well, thank you. That's a great question. I think anytime I learn something new, there's a shift, and that may be learning something new about myself or learning something new about the world. So I try to learn something in each interview that I do with people. I mean, one of the most impactful interviews I did was with Bruce Lipton, The Biology of Belief. And me and my girlfriend, we were traveling California. We knew Bruce Lipton lived in the mountains of Santa Cruz, so I called him. I got his number somewhere. We showed up at his house, and we sat with him for 90 minutes. He talked in this really hot summer day. You can see on the video his armpits are just sweating. But he just laid out, and this was before he ever published any books. It was sometime in the early 2000s or maybe late 1990s. But what was so impactful about that was he was saying that the evolution is already complete on an individual level. And evolution is not something Darwin said, that it's a chance mutation, that evolution is geared by the intention of the consciousness. And so he talked about Lamarckian evolution, which is about direction and a bigger picture than Darwin. But he was saying that we go from, let's say, a single cell to many cells that form a multicellular organism. So let me see if I can explain it. We go from the one to the many to the one to the many. So these single cells got together and formed communities of cells that became another organism. And those cells were incorporated into the organism. So this is the process of evolution. The many get together and form a bigger collective one. So we're in the next stage of evolution. We are a planet with many different divergent cultures and people, but we're coming together as a singularity with the internet, with this incredible age of communication and the varieties of communication. If we can maintain peace long enough and stop the wars, we can come into a great oneness of humanity. So the amazing thing about that is this process is not confined to Earth. When the Earth comes together as one humanity, the next step in that evolution is to meet other communities of planets out there. I mean, it was just like a light bulb moment where he led me through this natural process of our cosmic galactic evolution. It's like, of course, we're obviously not the only life form, but we have this delusion that we are, and so when Lipton led me through this process of evolution, and it was in a way proof that we weren't alone and that we're on the verge of the next step of a galactic community. Does that make sense?
It does. It almost sounds like, if you've ever heard the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will come. But if you apply that onto a whole human level, if when the humanity is ready, the next level will come.
And we're getting ready, whether we like it or not. Already, I mean, of course, on your shows, you go into the UFO thing. These are sentient beings that are coming in and out of our consciousness in order to prepare us for a shift. And I'm writing about some of this in a book that will be published at some point, where to meet the ET beings means we have to radically change who we think we are. And we can only do that. We can really only do that once we come into a wholeness, because we need to have that solidity. And they're waiting for that. Disclosure and contact are two parallel paths that are moving through human consciousness. Do you know what I mean by that? Disclosure and contact. Disclosure is the government saying, hey, they're here. Contact are the ETs saying, hey, we're here. And they sort of are at odds with each other, but they're sort of, working along the same path to prepare not just individuals, but it is the biggest event that has ever happened to humanity, is discovering the other.